This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over which filter type may be best for you, and I think it is area specific. I have my preferences for the filter type that I like, and I'll probably start by sharing my preferred filter type with some exceptions, but every area is a little bit different, so I'm going to go over the pros and cons, just in general, of the 3 most popular pool filter types. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy coaching program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support. From me, I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. So if you're new to pools or new to the pool service industry, you're going to run into 3 main types of filters with different configurations of some of the types. The first type is a sand filter. Basically, it is exactly what the description says it is. It's a filter that's filled about halfway up with sand, and this is how the water gets filtered through there. And it doesn't seem like it would work, but if you think about it, the dirt will be trapped in the layer of sand, and then the clean water passes through. Now, this is the most inefficient filter type, and I'll go over that later when I'm comparing all 3 together. I'm just giving you the types in general here. So that's what a sand filter is. The next one is a DE filter, or diatomaceous earth filter, and this does come in a few different configurations. You have your standard grid type DE filter, then you have the cartridge type quad DE filter, and then you have what's called the bump filter, and it's a little bit different DE filter, typically for smaller pools, but they all use diatomaceous earth as their filter media. And then the last type is just a cartridge filter, and basically the cartridge filter is a piece of paper. Of course, it's paper of a higher quality. There's some of the filters are made of what's called remay. Others are made out of a more plastic paper type material. But essentially, it's just a paper filter, almost like your coffee filter, basically, that you use in the morning that filters the water. And this is a third type of filter type that's out there. And those are the main filter types that we use here in the United States. So I'll start with the sand filter, since this is what I started the podcast off with. Now this is, again, the easiest filter to operate. So if you have a pool and you want an easy operation, the sand filter is a way to go, because basically all you do is backwash a sand filter. Ever so often when the pressure gets too high, there's a pressure gauge on top of all these filters. I should back up and mention this. So the filter has different components. One component is a pressure gauge that's on top, and this is one of the most important components of a pool filter. This indicates if there's pressure being built up in the filter, which indicates the filter is getting dirty and less flow goes through, thereby the PSI, or the pressure in the filter, goes up, and you'll notice that the water quality may be suffering, the flow may be reduced. All these are results of the filter getting dirty over time. So with a sand filter, all you need to really do with a sand filter is backwash it on occasion. And, let's say the clean filter is at 20 PSI. When it gets to 30 PSI, you just backwash it. And that's about all you need to do with the sand filter. Every few years, you have to take the sand out, which is a big job, actually, and change it. But there's no taking it apart and cleaning it every 4 to 6 months. It's just, you just backwash it when it gets some pressure in there to relieve it and get it back to a clean state. And basically that's it for the sand filter. Now, I did mention that it's the most inefficient filter type. It only filters down to about 30 or 40 microns. And the micron is just a measurement of how fine a particle is. The lower the micron, the better. For example, most vacuum system bags operate off of 100 microns. So they get leaf debris, but a lot of the fine dirt passes through. And then, of course, you have robotic pool cleaners like the Dolphin. I'll just pick Dolphin out because they have a fine filter that gets down to about 20 microns. So you can see that a sand filter at 30 or 40 microns is not quite as efficient as even a robotic pool cleaner. However, you really can't see anything below like 30 microns or 40 microns too well. And so even though it's not as efficient as a D filter, which by the way filters down to about 3 to 5 microns, it is efficient in the fact that it's a pretty easy filter to use. And usually you have a multi-port valve on there where you can vacuum the waste. So it is a convenient filter. And if you're looking for the easiest filter type, the sand filter is the way to go. Now in my area, they're not popular at all. I'm not sure exactly why they were never that popular, but diatomaceous earth filters were the most popular filter in my area. And it's been like that ever since I started pool service in 1988. Now when I first started pool service, the most popular D filter, well, there was a few of them, but the most popular was the Pentair 2000 series, which is a stainless steel tank. And of course, there were some Hayward Titan filters as well. And the stainless steel tanks have kind of gone to the wayside, and now it's all fiberglass. But these were the first DE filters, and they had something called a separation tank to trap the DE. Now, the reason why they had this is because diatomaceous earth is a messy element once you're using it and cleaning with it. It's also pretty messy when you're charging the filter with the powder. All in all, one of the drawbacks of a diatomaceous earth filter is the kind of mess factor. I'll just leave it at that. When you clean one out, diatomaceous earth goes everywhere sometimes. When you're charging it, it's a dusty powder. Now they do sell a low dust DE powder. It's by Cellapool, and it's a really good DE powder that's low dust. But typically, the biggest complaint you're going to get with a diatomaceous earth filter is how messy it is to clean that filter. Also, the majority of the modern D filters have an engineering design that I don't like and a lot of pool pros don't appreciate, and that is a circular formation with the grids with a top manifold. Pentair, the FNS Plus, Hayward, and Jandy all make the same exact vertical grid filter. In the old days, they had horizontal grids, which I guess had their drawbacks, but they were a lot easier to clean in my opinion. And so the engineering design factor of the standard grid D filters is in itself a drawback in my opinion. Now I do like the quad D filters, and this is made by Pentair, and this is basically a D filter with 4 cartridges, very similar to a cartridge filter, but the material of the cartridges is very similar to the D grids themselves, and this is a pretty innovative filter. I like them. They clean easily, they clean up like a cartridge filter, and you can also have larger square footage. I'm going to cover the square footage and the cleaning of the filters in a minute. Let me just talk about cartridge filters for a minute. And cartridge filters are my preferred filter. I like them the best out of all the filter types because of the ease of cleaning them and the fact that they have a larger square footage area. And I think the cartridge filter also filters down to a good micron. I think I didn't mention D again specifically, but D filters will filter again down to about 3 to 5 microns because the diatomaceous earth actually coats the grids, and this is why the DE is actually essential to the filter. The dirt is trapped on the diatomaceous earth, and the clean water passes through the grids. Now for a cartridge filter, there is no diatomaceous earth. It's just the piece of paper basically, and it's again different materials that different manufacturers use for their cartridges. The cheaper cartridges are going to have cheaper paper, and the more expensive cartridge filters are going to have more premium paper inside there. And basically the dirt just sticks to the cartridge filter, the clean water passes through, and cartridge filters filter down to about 10 to 20 microns. You really can't tell if you get to a pool and you're looking at the water. In my opinion, I can't tell if it's a sand filter usually, a D filter, or a cartridge filter when I first arrive at a pool. If the pool is being maintained properly, the water is sparkling blue, you can't really tell what filter type is on that pool, in my opinion, because they're all within the range of each other. Yes, diatomaceous filters do filter to the smallest micron, and I suppose if you stand there long enough, you can kind of extrapolate that it's a D filter if it is like the best looking water out of all of them. But they're all going to filter the water just fine, and I wouldn't say that filtration of the water would be a deciding factor in my opinion. What would be a deciding factor is the square footage of the filter and the ease of cleaning. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. As I mentioned, sand filters are the easiest filters to operate. You just backwash them when you need to. They're not quite as environmentally friendly or efficient because you do lose a lot of water with the sand filter, and that's a factor to consider. But if you're looking at these three filters as far as ease of cleaning, the cartridge filters, in my opinion, are the easiest because you just take the lid off, take the cartridges out. Either there's 4 cartridges in there or just 1 cartridge. Hose that thing off, put it back in the filter, and you're pretty much done. Diatomaceous filters, you got to clean all the D off the grids thoroughly, and then you have to put it back together and recharge it with diatomaceous earth. So it's a little bit more complex. There's more involved in it, and it's my least favorite filter type to clean, really. Now let me just talk about square footage. Now sand filters come in various sizes. The most popular ones are 300 to 400 pounds of sand. The larger the sand filter, the larger the filtration area, or the bigger the pool you can put it on. So if you have a 20,000 gallon pool, you could probably get away with a 300 or 400 pound sand filter, no problem. It's pretty equivalent to a 450 or 500 square foot cartridge filter. And believe it or not, it's pretty equivalent to a 60 square foot D filter. Now, the square footage on a D filter is kind of one of those things where you scratch your head a little bit because D filters have 60 square feet. Sand filters really don't have square footage, but they have pounds of sand, and that's kind of how you size them. And cartridge filters have a lot of square footage, 450, 520. Some have even like 700 square feet. And so if you're comparing a D filter to a cartridge filter, the cartridge filter has sometimes 10 times the cleaning square footage of a D filter. However, since the diatomaceous earth is on the grids themselves and makes the D filter extremely efficient in filtering, you really don't need the larger square footage for the D filter to be effective. And that's why a 60 square foot D filter is comparable to a 300 pound sand filter or a 500 square foot cartridge filter. So don't let that kind of fool you into thinking that a D filter is much smaller and therefore it's not going to work for my pool. It's actually not that way. It's just like anything else. The square footage is something that is used in the industry, yes, to size filters, but it doesn't really signify the filter's efficiency. Take the Aquastar pipeline filter, for example. It's a 200 square foot cartridge filter, but it's much more efficient than a cartridge filter twice the size of it. It's something to consider when you're looking at the filters, though, because the bigger the pool, the larger the filter you're going to need, and the better off you are with a larger filter. For example, if you had a 20,000 gallon pool, yes, a 300 or 400 pound sand filter is fine. I would say a 500 square foot cartridge filter would work fine. And then I would probably put a quad D filter, the 100 square foot quad D filter on that pool, just to give it the most efficient flow. But most 20,000 gallon pools have a 60 square foot D filter. I've had a few that had a 40 square foot D filter. A little bit of an issue, but it's still manageable. The larger the filter, the better. Like for instance, I wouldn't put a 200 square foot or 150 square foot cartridge filter on a 20,000 gallon pool, with the only exception maybe being the Aquastar pipeline filter, which is designed for larger pools even though it's a single cartridge itself. As far as maintenance costs, well, every 3 years or so you're going to have to change all the D grids out of there and all of the cartridges out of the cartridge filter. So if you're changing all of the grids in a filter, Figure you're going to spend about $300 for that. They're about $30 each. And if you're going to change the cartridges out, each cartridge is probably going to cost you about $50 or $60 each, so $200, $250. So they're pretty much equal in cost. Well, the D filter may be a little more expensive over time than the cartridge filter, depending on what cartridges you use. And the sand filter, basically, if you maintain it properly, the sand can stay in there for a very long time, many, many years. Some people don't even change their sand filter after 10 years. But when you do go to change the sand out of there, you're going to be looking at $300 to $500 or maybe even more for a professional to come there and get the sand out, put the new sand in, and make sure everything's operational. So the sand filter, of course, would have the lowest cost compared to a DE and a cartridge filter, just by the fact there are no elements inside there. It's just sand inside there. And the D filter and cartridge filters are pretty close in cost, and the grids last about as long as the cartridges last. Now, the only exception to that are the quad D filters. I find that those cartridges seem to last 4 to 5 years versus the standard vertical grids that last maybe 3 years at the most. And it's one of those things where there's more maintenance with the D filter and a cartridge filter because you're cleaning those, depending on your area, every 4 to 6 months. You're taking it apart completely and cleaning it. Now, the D filter does have a lot of the similar attributes of a sand filter, whereas you can backwash a D filter. So in between cleaning the D filter, if the PSI gets up there from let's say 20 to 30 PSI, you can actually backwash it just like you would do a sand filter, and then recharge it with some DE, maybe 2 or 3 pounds of DE when you go to recharge it. And so it operates very similar to a sand filter. There's also the possibility of having a multi-port backwash valve on a D filter as well, and so that makes it very comparable to a sand filter. Now, the biggest drawback with the cartridge filter is that you can't backwash it, which means that you're going to have to take it apart and clean it every time completely. And this is why the cartridge filter, the quad cartridge filter, the one with 4 cartridges inside, maybe 400 to 500 square feet, is ideal for my area of Southern California because we don't have a ton of dirt and dust in the area. It's just a regular amount of dust and dirt. And so you can go 6 months without cleaning them, and it's not a problem. But if you're in an area like the high desert of California or Arizona, the cartridge filters may require more cleaning than not. Sometimes a D filter or a sand filter works a little better in those really dusty environments because you can backwash them continuously. But it's not a big deal breaker, I don't think, because the cartridge filter is pretty easy to clean. Just note that if you're in a really dirty area, the cartridge filter is going to need more cleaning, and it may not go every 6 months. You may have to do it every 2 months or 3 months in that case. And so that's the major drawback with this cartridge filter, is the inability to backwash the cartridge filter, where the sand filter and D filter are superior over that because you can backwash those in between cleaning when the filter pressure rises. Which filter type would I recommend for you? Well, I'm not a big fan of sand filters because to me they're inefficient. They're not that effective in my area of California because we don't have a lot of dirt anyway, and it's an inefficient filter type. You have to have a little bit lower flow going to it. And to me, all the sand filters that I've ever dealt with in my area have been inefficient. Now, this is different if you're in the Midwest or in an area where there's a lot of dirt. The sand filter may be perfectly suitable for your region. So just understand that in my region of Southern California, outside of Los Angeles County, sand filters are not the best filter type. And I mentioned that D filters were the most popular filter type in my area, but now it's about 50-50. Half the pools are DE, the other half are cartridge filters. Builders in my area generally don't put in sand filters or D filters because there's a lot of regulations and they have to do a lot more plumbing, especially for the waistline, so they don't bother with that. They just put cartridge filters in. And cartridge filters are definitely more popular with a lot of pool pros because we find them easy to clean, and we do like the added square footage over a D filter. And you'll notice a big difference in the flow of water with the cartridge filter over a D filter and sand filter, in my opinion. So the cartridge filters are definitely more popular in my area. So if, as a default, I would say the first filter type that I would recommend is a 450 to 520 square foot cartridge filter. And then my second filter choice would be the Quad D filter. It's a lot like a cartridge filter, but it has diatomaceous earth, so you get the 3 to 5 micron cleaning of that. and it's so similar to a cartridge filter. It's actually plumbed in the same way you would plumb in a cartridge filter. So again, default would be cartridge filter, then diatomaceous earth filter, and then the last filter that I would put in would be a sand filter. That's kind of the last resort in my area. It may be the first resort in your area. Builders may be putting in sand filters, and that's okay if your area is a sand filter area. But cartridge filters are definitely preferred here, and preferred by a lot of pool pros across the nation, in my opinion. And if you're looking for other podcast episodes, you can find those by going to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. There'll be over 1,700 podcasts for you there. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.